Hi everyone, so welcome back. Today's video is one that I'm really not looking forward to making. I spent all last month trying to convince myself to, and I just couldn't do it, so here we are. I'm not sure how it's gonna go. It's not a pleasant video, it's not a happy video, and it's nothing like the rest of my content, but it is extremely important to me that I make this, and I hope that it does somebody some kind of good. Just a warning, I will be talking about cancer and death of a parent, so yeah. This video is about my mom. Her name is Tammy. She was an incredibly fun person. Like, she liked to be silly and joke around and do crazy little dances. Even though she could not dance, absolutely had no rhythm, she would do it just to make people laugh, I think. You know, she just liked to make people laugh. She loved kids. She worked at a cafeteria in an elementary school, and to her there was nothing better. I think you could have offered her $1 million to do another job, and I honestly think she would have chosen Lybrook. So that's who she was. Loved her coworkers, and they love her, and she had a lot of friends. She had a lot of people that loved her, but unfortunately, she also ended up getting stage 4 breast cancer. At the end of April of 2017, she unfortunately did find out that she had stage 4 cancer. And more specifically, it was a grade 3 hormone receptor positive ductal carcinoma, which is breast cancer and a pretty serious form of it. And she took it all in stride, you know. She was diagnosed, and then starting on, I believe, May 2nd was her first treatment. She was taking Taxotere, adriamycin, and Cytoxan. Those are chemotherapy treatments. She had them every 2 weeks for a total of 6 weeks. And, you know, she really tolerated them pretty well. She was tired, but she didn't have any nausea, any vomiting, or anything like that, thankfully. Since her scans after chemo showed that her tumor had shrunk to the size of a pea, I believe starting off it was relatively large. I can't remember the exact dimensions now for some reason, but it was quite large, and it shrank down to about the size of a pea. So she didn't need any radiation or anything like that. Her chemo went from May 2nd until the beginning of July, and then she was scheduled a mastectomy in November. Went through all that, everything went really well. The mastectomy couldn't have gone better. The margins were clear, which just means they found no cancer in the surrounding area from where they removed the tumor. And scans afterward actually showed that she had reached that oh-so-coveted status of no evidence of active disease. And we were all so excited and so happy. And she healed just fine from the mastectomy. Again, she kind of just took it all in stride. I think she just figured it is what it is. There's nothing I can do about it. And as long as I'm alive and well, then so be it. And she just did really well for the following couple of years. You know, she had her scans until she started refusing them because her doctor told her that as long as she felt okay, she no longer needed scans. That's what her oncologist told her, which was mistake number 1. And it's ultimately, I believe, what cost her life. A mistake on the oncologist's part, not my mom's. She's the patient. She didn't know any better. She was wrongly advised on what she should and shouldn't do. So my mom had been refusing bone scans as well as PET scans because her oncologist made her feel like as long as her tumor markers were okay, which are, if you don't know, they do a blood draw and there are a few different numbers that they check, and if the numbers are within a normal range, they kind of assume that your body is still relatively cancer-free, and her doctor just went with that. Yeah, so that was great until March of 2019, and then everything at that point spiraled out of control. Like, it is unbelievable. A little backstory. My mom had complained periodically about getting dizzy when she would stand up, but that happens to me as well. I have trouble with my ears, and so I kind of just figured, hey, maybe that's where I got it from, you know, we both just have these issues. She seemed to feel perfectly fine otherwise. But I kept it in the back of my mind. And then one day, she started getting incredibly dizzy, and trigger warning, I'm going to talk about vomiting here, so if that bothers you, I understand if you skip ahead a little bit or just stop watching, I guess. But she started getting very dizzy to the point where every time she would look specifically to the right, she would vomit and continue vomiting. And that went on for a while. She went to see 2 doctors at least. Both of them diagnosed her with vertigo. She even saw her own oncologist, who went along with that and never suggested they do any kind of MRI or scan of her brain. In my opinion, was mistake number 2 for the oncologist. They scheduled her an appointment with a physical therapist because they told her that the calcium deposits in her ears were off, and that once they fixed that, she would stop feeling dizzy. So my mom went through all of this, hoping, praying, believing, trusting her team of doctors. And 8 weeks later, after losing, I think it was 22 pounds, my dad finally rushes my mom to the ER, where the doctor there, an ER doctor, orders a CT scan after finding out her symptoms and that she was previously diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. And that is where, finally, someone finds out that my mom has a 3 centimeter by 4 centimeter tumor on the left side of her cerebellum, so here. And a craniotomy is scheduled, which is where they're going to go in and remove that tumor. So she was diagnosed with a brain tumor on April 28th. She had her surgery on May 3rd, which is 2 days after my birthday. But she did really well. The surgery went perfectly. We were told that it was clear, that she was clear, everything was fine. We were so happy, you know, she was happy. She was instantly back to herself. No more vomiting, no more dizziness, nothing. She was just herself again. And we were all so hopeful. She was hopeful. Sorry if there are a lot of jump cuts in this. I refuse to cry because my mom didn't cry, and all of my Tackett family members watching this know that we don't cry, so no. So anyway, she was scheduled to receive radiation treatment beginning in June, and that came. She got through it. She handled it really well again. But then shortly after, the vomiting began, and she was saying this time that she wasn't dizzy, so we're all very confused, but the doctors were telling us it was likely just a result of the radiation, and it was minimal compared to what it had been, so we thought, okay, it's just her brain having all this stuff done to it, and that's how she's reacting. We were all, at that point, still really hopeful. And again, and I'm not even sure who all knows this in my family, but her oncologist did not even suggest a follow-up MRI after the radiation. She told my mom that as long as she felt okay, she didn't need one. And my mom actually pushed to get it because I noticed that her hands were trembling like this. And my mom always had relatively steady hands, I would say. And there was something different in her eyes. Her eyes looked strange to me. So I pushed her to please get the MRI. I didn't care what her doctor said. I wanted her to do it, and so she did. And talk about life-shattering. Unfortunately, the MRI showed some enhancements on and around her brain that her oncologist stated as fact was not cancer. It was just from the radiation, that's all it was. Her brain just needed to heal. Mistake number 3, 4, I don't even remember at this point. Too many. But rather than risk it, they did a lumbar puncture on her, and they did the lumbar puncture to make sure there was no cancer cells in her spinal fluid. And unfortunately, on July 16th, my mom was diagnosed with leptomeningeal disease. And that's what this video is about. Because when she was diagnosed, I could find no personal accounts of this disease. I had no idea what to expect, and that was really hard. So, I decided that when everything was said and done and when I was ready, I was going to make a video kind of talking about what we went through and what to expect. So if you are here, if you found this video because a loved one, you or a loved one, has been diagnosed with leptomeningeal disease, I just need to warn you. It is not pretty. This video is going to be very blunt. It is going to be very harsh because leptomeningeal disease is harsh and terrifying. And there are no pretty words that I can say to change that. So my mom was prescribed intrathecal methotrexate, which means that it was administered via a lumbar puncture. She had that treatment, I believe, 3 times, and almost immediately it affected her cognitive abilities. She was no longer herself. She was confused. She was forgetting things. So we all noticed pretty quickly that something wasn't right, and then she began vomiting, like violently vomiting, and it was terrifying. And then what led to her being admitted to the ER is she fell twice in one day, and my dad called 911, and she was taken by ambulance to the hospital. There, unfortunately, we were told in no uncertain terms that she had reached pretty much the end of the line. Her neurologist, a neurosurgeon, whatever he was, told us that that was pretty much it. And so we're all trying to deal with that. And then he came in the next day. She was admitted to try to control the nausea and all of that stuff. He came in the next day and said that during the night he just racked his brain trying to figure out how he could help my mom, and he decided to do an Omaya Reservoir. An Omaya Reservoir is essentially a port that they put under the skin on your brain, on your skull, and it allows them to access your brain directly. So there is a little port, and then there is a tube that goes down into the brain, and they can administer chemotherapy directly into this port, and it goes right into your brain. And he didn't have much hope, and he was honest about that, but he said he was willing to try it, so that's what we did. She received, I believe, 1, maybe 2 more treatments of methotrexate, and it just made her so sick that we kind of just had to stop that. But what they also used it for was to withdraw some of the cerebrospinal fluid from her brain to hopefully relieve some of the pressure that she was experiencing, which was exacerbating her symptoms, in their opinion. I personally didn't notice any difference after they withdrew the fluid, but that's just me. Sorry if this video is all over the place. It's really hard to make. If you don't know what leptomeningeal disease is, it is essentially, from someone who is not a doctor and has tried so hard to understand, it is basically when cancer gets into the spinal fluid and between the linings of the brain. And what it does are those cells, those cancer cells, clump together, and they create a barrier around the brain, and it fills in all of the gaps and all of the areas where spinal fluid, cerebrospinal fluid, would normally be able to pass through. So it creates blockages, which creates a lot of pressure and leads to a whole host of symptoms, which we are now going to get into. Leptomeningeal disease is a late-stage complication of typically breast cancer, lung cancer, or melanoma. It's fatal. I'm not going to beat around the bush. It is fatal. With treatment, most people have a survival of 2 to 4 months, and without treatment, it is usually 4 to 6 weeks. My mom was diagnosed on July 16th, and she passed on August 29th, so it was very rapidly progressing, very, very rapid. I'm not going to speak on my mom's specific symptoms because I would like to leave her her dignity, and I feel like leptomeningeal disease kind of strips people of that automatically. So I'm going to cover a variety, some of which she had, some of which she did not, and just go from there. So it can cause pretty much any neurological symptom that you can think of. It also causes vomiting, dementia, incontinence, the inability to walk, headaches, neck and back pain, like severe pain for some people, hydrocephalus, which is the buildup of that fluid around your brain, extreme agitation in some people because you're in pain and you're confused. It can also cause insomnia, hallucinations, blindness, deafness, seizures, tremors, and just affect your vital functions. Affect your heart rate, your breathing, everything. I mean, it's your brain. It controls your entire existence, so everything. The point of me making this video is, as I mentioned before, to hopefully give people who are dealing with this answers, and just blunt answers, because my mom's doctor, her oncologist, right up to the point pretty much where my mom went on hospice, told us that she could live another 10 years but she would never get better, knowing damn well my mom was not going to live another 10 years. She didn't even live another 10 weeks. So please understand how serious this is, and understand that if your loved one is dealing with this, they just need you there. They just need you to be there. As hard as it is for you to do that, it's harder on them, so please just be there. Obviously, every case is different, and there's always room for hope, and I hope for you that you or your loved one manages to have years ahead of you. I just want you to know right now what a potential reality is, because so many of us lived in denial with my mom, and in the end, I think I just wish that we'd gotten some blunt answers. Because as hard as that would be, it was harder to have false hope in my mom's specific situation. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say. Please, if you start experiencing, or someone you love who has cancer starts experiencing dizziness and vomiting that doesn't go away after just a couple of days, please, please, please demand a scan. I don't care what you have to do. I don't care how ugly and mean you have to be. Demand that scan. Don't let it go, please. Your loved one's life, your own life, is more important than whether or not your oncologist likes you. And if you feel like your oncologist isn't looking out for you, if you feel like they do not have your best interests at heart, please find somebody else if you can, please. That is so important. It is so important that you have a team that is fighting for you, with you, and not just... I don't know what my mom's oncologist was doing. She was a nice woman. She was a personable woman. She was a professional woman. But she dropped the ball several times with my mom, and I stand by that. I do. So please fight for yourself. Be your own advocate. Be the advocate for your family member who needs you. If they can't do it for themselves, please do it for them. It's your life. It's their life. It's worth it. It's worth whatever you have to do. I think that's it. I don't know if I left anything out. I really did not want to have to make this video, but again, I felt like it was important that I do. So I was all over the place, and there were a lot of jump cuts because I had to keep taking time to just center myself. But if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. I'll do my best to answer them. Again, I'm not a doctor. None of this is meant to be medical advice. It's just what we experienced with my mom. Yeah, I really truly hope nobody watches this. I really hope that no one needs this, but I know that's not likely because unfortunately cancer exists. So yeah, take care of yourselves, be kind to yourselves, be kind to others, especially in this current environment. Just be safe. Bye.